the Jedi Order survived Order 66? In the main story, almost all of the Jedi are killed when the clones are told to execute the dreadful Order 66 following Palpatine's accusations of treason. On one of our old videos though, a viewer asked what if instead the Jedi had survived the Purge? That's what we'll be exploring in today's video. So hop on your speeder bike, grab a glass of my galaxy-renowned Bantha brew from the Mos Eisley Cantina, and let's hop right into this wild what-if scenario. Actually, before we begin, I just wanted to pause for a second and appreciate something that happened to me while I was writing this. I just heard some of the other people in my dormitory out in the hallway blasting Star Wars music and dueling with broom handles as if they were lightsabers. It really made me smile. I watched for a little bit and I showed them my own replica lightsaber, which they thought was pretty funny. I didn't interfere in their duel at all, and I think that it concluded when they started throwing juice boxes or projectiles down the hallway and they exploded, forcing them to clean up. It just made me smile a little bit, and I thought that it might bring some light to your day too. Alright, now let's get back to the story. This story begins on the fateful day when Anakin turned to the dark side, Mace Windu is tossed out a window, and Sidious utters the dreadful words, "Execute Order 66. In that moment, the clones start to turn on their Jedi generals, and the genocide of the Jedi begins. However, in this timeline, a slight change is made. Moments before Order 66 comes to fruition, Yoda feels a premonition in the Force. For an instant, something feels off. A darkness crosses his soul, and he knows that he has to tell all of the Jedi that something evil is about to happen, and that they should run far, far away. For a brief moment, Yoda asks to excuse himself from his clone soldiers, and he sends out a hologram to all of the Jedi in the Order, a warning of something to come. He tells them that he doesn't know what's coming, but that he can tell it's something dark. He warns all of the Jedi who receive this message to run, especially from Coruscant. From there, they could remuster and they could continue to pursue their callings in the Force. Yoda hangs up his call, desperately hoping that as many Jedi as possible had heard the transmission. When he returns to where he was before, Gree had clearly received the order. There was a different air about him, and the clone in green armor fires upon his Jedi general. Yoda decapitates him, just like in the movie, before he flees from Kashyyyk with the help of the Wookiees and Chewbacca. How does this impact the rest of our timeline? Let's keep going and find out. Following Order 66, Yoda and Obi-Wan still meet with Bail Organa in the Tantive 4. However, this time, they know that at the very least, some Jedi had gotten the message from Yoda about the coming darkness. Bail informs the Jedi that there had been a disaster averted at the temple because of Yoda's message, and that the Masters who had been present evacuated everybody quickly. All of the younglings escaped before Anakin marched in with the 501st to slaughter all the Jedi for supposed treason against the Empire. However, because the Jedi left at the temple were defenseless, some Jedi didn't make it, and also Anakin and the clones commandeered the temple, as the flag of the Republic flew above the statues of Jedi from days long past. Obi-Wan asks Bail if he knew where the Jedi from the temple had gone, and sadly the senator says that he didn't. However, he recommends that the two Jedi do not return to Coruscant. It's swarming with clones, Republic officers, and allegedly a monstrous Jedi who had believed some of Palpatine's lies and turned on his order. While Bail doesn't know everything that exactly happened, he had his ear in some of the security councils of the Senate, and he had heard that the Jedi had been accused of treason against the Republic. He also tells the pair that there had been a special hearing in the Senate called by Palpatine to elaborate further on what had transpired. Obi-Wan and Yoda both want more answers, but in this timeline, they know to remain patient. Yoda's call had gone out to all of the Jedi. Hopefully, someone would tell him now where these Jedi were. A few moments later, by the will of the Force, a personal call comes to Yoda from his hologram projector. Yoda answers, and he's greeted with the welcome face of Master Kelleran Beck, the one who saved Grogu during the events of The Mandalorian. He tells Yoda that all of the Jedi who had evacuated the temple were mustering on the ancient Jedi world of Tython, a place that is both out of reach from the public and safe for Jedi to rebuild and figure out a plan for future steps. Yoda nods, telling Kelleran that him and Obi-Wan would join them, and then he signs off, hoping that the call hadn't been traced. Yoda requests that Bail drop them off on the nearest planet, where him and Obi-Wan could use their credits to buy a new ship. They disguise themselves heavily, knowing that their faces were probably plastered all over the galaxy as traitors. Obi-Wan shaves his beard, cuts his hair, and tries to help Yoda fix the funny way that he speaks in order to be less conspicuous in their travels. Following their purchase of a ship from a sketchy merchant on some backwater planet, the two Jedi make their way to Tython and reunite with the other Jedi Masters. Because of this regrouping of the Order, Yoda and Obi-Wan never go to fight Sidious and Vader. Following Anakin's slaughter of the Trade Federation leaders on Mustafar, when Padme comes to see him, she actually has some impact on his headspace. While he believes in the Empire due to Palpatine's brainwashing, he also admits to Padme that he had just killed younglings, people who had been innocent from the treasonous acts of their leadership. He also says that he believed that killing the Trade Federation leaders and warmongers had been an easy way out for them. He should have brought them to trial and forced them to see the consequences of their actions. The starry-eyed boy that Anakin had been when he'd first met Padme was gone, replaced by this monster. Anakin acknowledges to her that he's made mistakes, but that he still loves her and that he wants to see her survive childbirth. Padme tells him that his dreams are just that. Dreams. Even though Anakin had committed atrocities, because Obi-Wan isn't there to make him go over the edge, Anakin remains level-headed, and he ends up telling Padme that he will meet her back on Coruscant to discuss things further. Padme nods and she heads back to her ship with 3PO. Anakin takes R2 back to his starfighter, and the pair fly back together through hyperspace. Meanwhile, on Tython, the remaining members of the Jedi Council gathered together to decide on next steps for the Order. Plo Koon had heeded the words of Yoda and he had abandoned his post on Cato Neimoidia, something that he regrets deeply, as he had an immense care for his men, even though they would have killed him if he had stuck around. The Council concludes that the best step for the Order at this point would be to move underground on Tython, returning to their roots and hiding out if the Imperials were ever to conduct a sweep of the planet. The Jedi begin to use the Force to construct underground temples beneath the monuments that already exist on the surface. When the Jedi move underground, they do their best to conceal their identities while they rebuild in the shadows, getting ready to train the next generation for their battle against their Sith foes. When Anakin and Padme arrive on Coruscant, the Empire awaits them both. The Emperor tells Vader that he has done well, and that he eliminated a significant threat to the new Imperial rule. Anakin had indeed done his job of bringing peace, stability, justice, and freedom to his new empire. He then tells Padme that her heroism in the Senate would be missed, and he heard that she will be soon taking an indefinite leave of absence for personal reasons. Padme nods, stating that she will return in the near future. However, in her stead, she decides to put someone else in a position of power while she's gone. After seeing how Jar Jar had been easily manipulated into granting Palpatine more power, Padme had lost trust in some of his political abilities and intelligence. Instead, she requests that her old friend and former ruler of Otogunga, Boss Nass, represent her constituency in the Senate. After Padme leaves to deal with some administration before her leave of absence to give birth, Palpatine walks with Anakin, telling him that he still fears for Padme's life in childbirth. He also says that he will grant his apprentice as much time as he needs to be with his wife. Anakin pauses for a second, and then he begins to lay out some of his concerns that he had been feeling lately to his master. Anakin says that he feels guilty about killing the younglings, especially since they really had no place in the Jedi coup. In addition, Anakin says that he believes they could have been valuable resources to the Empire, especially if the Inquisitors that Palpatine had told Anakin about started an academy to train them specifically in the ways of the dark side. Anakin also remarks that if he truly wanted justice in the galaxy, if that is what Palpatine really desired, then he would have requested that Anakin bring the corporate separatist leaders in for official trial. Anakin questions his master, who at this point simply responds to him by saying that this is all for the greater good of the galaxy. Anakin, still believing in the mission of the Empire, chooses to trust Palpatine. Sidious knows that for Anakin to truly embrace the full power of the dark side, he would need him to lose Padme, his one anchor holding him back from his full potential. As Anakin goes on the mission to bleed his saber following the constitution of the Empire, which we can see in the Vader comics, Palpatine sends a group of clone commandos to try and covertly assassinate the senator following the birth of her children, because Palpatine thinks that her children could still be valuable. And also, because of Padme's volunteer Naboo security force, the clones have a difficult time fully executing their goals. In addition to that, some of them are apprehensive about why they're conducting this mission. Padme, while she opposed the new government, had done nothing that they would constitute as treason, as they had been told during their pre-mission brief. However, believing in the good of the Empire, the clones follow through with their mission. They execute it without flaw, and Padme is assassinated following the birth of her children while she sleeps, along with the entirety of her security team. Just as requested, the clones leave the children alone, who are under the care of Padme's handmaidens while she rests. In the morning, the handmaidens find Padme and her crew dead in her quarters, and they're absolutely taken aback. A galactic uproar is caused with Padme's death, and a state funeral is arranged. When Anakin returns with his red lightsaber, Palpatine breaks the news to him of Padme's death. He blames Gungan insurgents who wanted to see Boss Nass remain in power, and he tells Anakin that he's sorry for his loss. Anakin is absolutely heartbroken, and he asks that his master allow him to deal with this threat to the Galactic Empire personally. Because Anakin hasn't been gravely injured and put in a suit, his power is incredible. With the death of Padme, some of the anger that Anakin had for many years broils deep beneath the surface. On his way to Naboo, Anakin places his starship on autopilot and he enters a deep meditative rest. His rage continues to fester, and when Anakin arrives in the swamps of Naboo, he's ready to obliterate those who had killed his wife. Anakin swims to Otoh Gunga, and he is greeted by the Gungan military when he arrives. They ask him why they have the honor of greeting a famed Imperial general. Immediately, with his eyes glowing yellow, Anakin ignites his newly bled lightsaber, and he begins his massacre of the Gungans. The military puts up a valiant fight, but Anakin's force power is unmatched. He destroys many structures by using force push, and he also crushes many of the Gungan necks at once with a powerful force choke. Anakin cuts down everyone who opposes him, and he eventually makes his way to the chamber of the bosses. While Nass is no longer a boss because he's been given a special place in the Senate, he still sits on the council as a special advisor. When Anakin goes into the chambers, there is nothing stopping the bosses from meeting the same fate as the younglings had during Revenge of the Sith. Anakin looks deep into the eyes of Nass and he holds him in a force choke, as he is impressed that he sees no fear in them. Instead, Nass says to Anakin that he's a lion to you, sir, before letting out one last slobber and succumbing to Anakin's rampage. When Anakin finishes his mission, he turns off his lightsaber, and it is clear in that moment that Anakin had finally fully died. Now, there was only the Sith monster, Vader. When Anakin returns to Coruscant, the galaxy is shocked by his show of force. They're either scared into submission or they're supportive of his defeat of the terrorists who had gone against the benevolent government and killed a popular senator. Anakin takes his newborn children back to the galactic capital and he begins to raise them on his own. Anakin is a harsh man, but he loves his children. While he is tough on them, he is not cruel. Anakin teaches them the value of strength, political savvy, and power in the new world. They treat Palpatine like an uncle, and they don't know about how he treats Anakin behind closed doors. Vader also trains the Inquisitors, who still lead the hunt for the hidden Jedi Order across the galaxy. Anakin not only is a military leader, but he also gives many speeches to the masses, and even in the Senate. When Palpatine tries to remove clones from service, Anakin is one of the few leaders who actually opposes this, especially since he believes that they are the best soldiers for the Empire. This is one of the few cases in which he publicly disagrees with his master. Anakin and his children become the face of the new government, and they are displayed to be the ideal Imperials, loyal, proper, powerful, and confident. In addition, when Anakin did confront his master in the Senate about the discontinuation of clones, many senators ended up coming to his side, allowing for far more clone soldiers to be introduced into the Empire. While there's a good mix of civilian and clones now at this time, and stormtroopers still become a thing, the clones remain in Imperial service, and Rex, despite his doubts about the Empire's direction, continues to follow his famed Jedi Master. He doesn't always agree with Anakin's tactics, but he does think that the galaxy needs to be stable, and that there is still hope for the Empire to improve and become a more benevolent government. On Tython, the Jedi continue to rebuild. They still have recruiters traversing the Outer Rim in places where the Imperial presence is less recognized, and they're still expanding their influence. The underground temples on Tython have become expansive, and the Jedi continue to train in their ways and dogma. Yoda starts to become older, and Obi-Wan has to take over many of the elderly master's duties. There are talks within the Council as time passes of revealing themselves to the galaxy, showing them that there's still hope out there. However, the Jedi decide that it would not be prudent. They still have to keep in touch with Bail, who informs them of galactic politics and affairs. Obi-Wan is quite hurt that Anakin had fully turned his back on the Jedi way, and that he had embraced the policies of the Empire. However, he still has hope for the man. Anakin is good at heart, even if he did commit many atrocities. Obi-Wan knows that there's still some light in him, especially when he hears about the children. While Kelleran Beck is searching the Outer Rim for new Jedi to add to the Order, he ends up falling into an Imperial checkpoint. He has a cool head and he manages to get through without raising suspicion. That's what he believes, at least. As it turned out, by chance, or perhaps by the will of the Force, the Ninth Sister had been present at the checkpoint while Beck was passing through. She senses his Force prowess, and she identifies that he feels familiar in the Force, seeing that he was a Jedi. She orders that the Imperials apprehend Beck's ship and board it. Even though the Imperials tell him that they're boarding, Beck remains calm, and he says that there's nothing to hide from them. As soon as the Imperials board the ship with the Ninth Sister, a sense of dread comes over Kelleran. However, he maintains his calm. He recognizes the darkness of the Ninth Sister, but he meditates and he keeps himself composed. Immediately, the Ninth Sister asks him where his other Jedi friends are. Kelleran says that he doesn't know what she's talking about, looking directly into her eyes. The Ninth Sister says that she knows he's lying, and she ignites her red blade. In response, knowing that he has to defend himself, Kelleran also pulls out his lightsaber, which had been hidden under his inconspicuous cloak. The pair duel and the Imperials watch in awe as they battle. However, Kelleran isn't known for his dueling skills. While he puts up a valiant fight, he ends up falling to the blade of the Ninth Sister. The Ninth Sister then orders that the Imperials look at the flight logs on Kelleran's ship, which he had conveniently erased right before the Imperials boarded him. However, the Ninth Sister knows that the ISB might be able to recover some of the data that had been lost, so she orders that the ship be commandeered, and she also orders that the ISB become involved to figure out what was going on. When word of this reaches the galactic capital, Vader is very intrigued. He remembers Kelleran and he remembers how good he was with the younglings. However, he's happy to see another one of those traitorous Jedi that had been defeated. He keeps a close personal eye on the ISB investigation into the flight logs, and one night, out of pure curiosity, he requests that Colonel Yularen allow him to view the investigation logs. Yularen says that Vader can see them, but he doesn't believe that Vader will actually be able to find anything. Beck had scrubbed the ship clear, and the ISB was coming up empty-handed. Vader has a crazy idea, and he asks Yularen if he can access the ship itself. Yularen frowns at him, but he isn't about to deny the right-hand man of the Empire what he desires. So Yularen takes Vader to the commandeered ship, and Vader begins exploring around. One of the powers that he's learned over the past few years during his tutelage under Sidious is Force Echo, which is the ability to use the Force and see the history of an object. Vader thinks that perhaps he can use this ability to see where the ship had gone, along with whether or not Kelleran Beck had been working with other Jedi. Sure enough, once Vader begins to explore the history of the ship, he catches glimmers of other presences and places in the back of his mind. He sees mountains, trees, rivers, and old Jedi monuments that he recognized from hollows back in his youngling and Padawan days. This is Tython, a Jedi stronghold that had stood for thousands of years. Some even speculated that Tython had been the birthplace of the Jedi Order, but remaining records were scarce from that time. Vader smiles and he thanks Yularen for allowing him to visit the vessel. He now saw what the ISB had missed. For all of General Tagg's talk about how new technology would save the Empire and about how Vader's use of the Force was outdated, he wouldn't be able to explain this one. Vader goes to the Emperor and he tells him that he has discovered the Jedi Order is hiding on Tython by using one of the powers that he had been learning since the fall of the Jedi. Palpatine tells Vader to assemble the Inquisitors and take down the Jedi who had gone into hiding. He also tells him to take Grand Admiral Thrawn with him, who had been a recent phenom in the Empire. Vader remembers Thrawn from that one time that they had worked together during the Clone Wars, and Thrawn also remembers Vader's face. They had worked well together, and they look forward to undertaking this mission together again. Vader says goodbye to his children, and he tells them that Uncle Palpatine will take care of them while he's gone. Vader leaves, ready to take on his former colleagues. When Vader arrives at Tython with Thrawn's fleet and the Inquisitors, he is ready to take on the Jedi. He arrives on the surface with a contingent of Imperial troops, and with the Inquisitors, some of whom had their own Death Troopers accompanying them. He can't find anyone when he arrives on the surface. However, when Vader takes a moment to feel the energy of the planet, he can sense the Jedi just beneath his feet. Vader goes to one of the old monuments on a hill, and he cuts the floor open with his red lightsaber. Sure enough, down in the trenches, Vader sees a network of tunnels right below his feet. He hops in, followed by his subordinates. Soon, the Jedi would be no more. As soon as Vader enters the tunnels, he can sense all of the other Jedi deep in the caves. His red lightsaber illuminates the halls, as do those of the other Inquisitors. The Death Troopers mumble in their voice modifiers, and the Imperials continue to trek through the tunnels. Every Jedi that they encounter is mowed down by Vader, who is now significantly more powerful than we see in the movies. He's in his prime, and his dark side abilities are incredible. With the mere flick of his wrist, Vader is able to break the necks of many of the inexperienced Jedi that he encounters. As he goes deeper, his rage continues to broil, and more Jedi appear. Vader hunts them all down, killing them without discrimination. Vader and his crew continue to dive deeper into the caves, and eventually they find what they've been looking for. The tunnel systems all come together to an underground temple that's guarded by some new Jedi Sentinels. The Grand Inquisitor smiles, looking forward to showing his old corps who is now the boss. Vader's contingent faces some struggle with the yellow-bladed warriors, but they manage to push through. Vader blasts open the monolithic door that stands before him with the Force, and he is immediately greeted with the faces of his former superiors. Obi-Wan, Yoda, Plo Koon, and some of the other old masters stand there, ready to do battle with the Sith Lord. Vader, having maximized his dark side power over the past few years due to not being burdened by the suit, gladly accepts this challenge, and he battles alongside the Inquisitors to try and defeat his former friends. Obi-Wan pleads with Anakin, asking that he consider joining the Order. He knows that deep down Anakin still exists and cares for the galaxy, and that he wanted his children to live their best lives. Anakin then tells Obi-Wan that he knew they were living their best lives now under the Empire, which had brought peace to a galaxy that was consumed by chaos, no thanks to the Jedi. Now, Vader would finally be able to end the Jedi Order once and for all, and he would get revenge on all of those who dared oppose his vision and held him back. A tear drops in Kenobi's eyes as he asks what had happened to Vader and how he had slid so far into darkness. Anakin says that freedom that the darkness offers was far more fulfilling than anything the constraints of the light could have given him, and that he would teach his children the same liberation. Only the strong would rule, and evidently the Jedi were no longer the strongest power in the galaxy. Anakin unleashes a barrage of Force lightning upon Obi-Wan, a skill that he could now master due to not having the suit. This catches the aging Jedi Master off guard, and he succumbs to Anakin's blast. Anakin then stabs him with his lightsaber, and he says one last goodbye to his old friend before Kenobi becomes one with the Force. Vader looks over at the other Inquisitors, and they seem to be holding their own against Plo and Yoda. However, a few of them, including the young Reva, have been slain, and Vader joins in the fight. Death Troopers now mow down Jedi in the background as they perform their duties effectively. However, because of the stand made by the Jedi Masters, a lot of the Padawans and younglings are able to escape through the tunnel systems. While some are pursued by Death Troopers, others squeak by using Force speed to scamper off into the darkness undetected. Eventually, Anakin has enough. He pulls down segments of the temple's walls with the Force, and he hurls them at the Masters who are already struggling with the Inquisitors. Yoda and Plo are knocked backwards, and Vader takes advantage of this. He extends his hand and squeezes his fist, performing his signature Force choke. Both of their necks snap instantly, and they vanish into the Force, just as Obi-Wan had. Vader orders that the Inquisitors work their way through the tunnels and find the remaining Jedi. While the Imperial contingent manages to apprehend a few Jedi, some of them manage to escape. However, when the Jedi take to the skies, Grand Admiral Thrawn's blockade of the planet manages to apprehend almost all of them. Their small freighters are no match for the might of the Star Destroyer's tractor beams. Thrawn captures many Jedi that day, but there are still a few who escape into hyperspace before they can be apprehended. One of these Jedi is Cal Kestis, who has now seen the Order he loved burned to the ground twice. Kanan Jarrus also manages to escape, still a lonely Padawan with no direction after the fall of the Order for the second time. The Order never had the chance to rebuild to the level that it would have taken to take on the Galactic Empire. Perhaps some of the survivors would join the growing rebellion. However, most of them would not. The shadow of the Empire continues to grow, and the Jedi end up being squashed after all. When Anakin arrives on Coruscant, he discovers that Palpatine had taken good care of his children. They had still been attending Imperial classes, and they had gone out into the city. Grand Moff Tarkin had even given them both personal tours of various military establishments on the capital planet. They're quite happy when their father returns, especially when he brings news that he had completed his mission to almost perfect success. The Inquisitors would still be needed to help fully wipe the stain of the Jedi from the galaxy, but for now, the Empire could rest easy, knowing that a large insurgency group had been disposed of. How do these events impact the end of our story? Let's keep going and find out. At the end of the day, the Empire remains intact. The Jedi who survived end up either living in hiding or they join rebel cells and take up arms for the greater cause. However, the propaganda machine of the Empire continues to churn, and with new warriors in Luke and Leia to represent the next generation of Imperials, people seem to gravitate more towards the Empire's mission than that of the rebellion. Instead of becoming a vocal voice of liberty in the Senate, Leia peddles the views of her father and the Emperor, and she constantly verbally spars with Mon Mothma and Bail Organa. Luke ends up attending the Imperial Academy and becoming a pilot, just like he had always wanted to. This is portrayed as a darling story by the Imperial media. Like father, like son. Vader had taught Luke how to fly, and he was glad that his son shared in his dream. As time progresses, Vader becomes more and more powerful. Eventually, he deposes his master and becomes the Emperor, crowning his children as heirs to the Empire. Vader rules with an iron fist, but he reinstates the Senate after Palpatine rid the galaxy of it. He knows that Padme would have wanted it this way. He also invests more training into new Force acolytes, providing General Tagg's assertion that the Force is dead in the Empire with a new perspective, and showing that it was quite incorrect. While the Jedi Order doesn't survive, Anakin is haunted by its legacy. As Emperor, he endeavors never to allow a group of religious fanatics to take as much control of the government as they had in the past. This is why he also decides to keep Tarkin's Death Star initiative, and he still decides to blow up the planet. Without Luke there to help destroy the Death Star and to help the rebellion live another day, this results in the rebellion being crushed right there and right then on Yavin, and the Death Star remaining to be a powerful image to the galaxy of what the Empire would do to those who opposed their vision. Thrawn also ends up getting his TIE Defender program approved, because following the construction of the Death Star, many of the Imperial funds could be diverted elsewhere. In addition, Vader, along with his children and his acolytes in the dark side, would be servants of the state, not the other way around. Vader's reign is peaceful, secure, and strong, although it is quite tough. The Empire, under Anakin's leadership, lives to survive another day. Hi there folks, thanks again for watching today's video. If you like this alternate timeline, I'd recommend checking out this other video, What If Mace Trusted Anakin? If you have any comments about this story, I would love to hear them in the comments below. Do you agree with how things played out? Would you like to see a part 2? If so, what do you think would happen in a sequel? In addition, we have an incredible Discord community that's continuing to grow daily. We'd love to see you join us so that we can keep in touch with you. In addition, your ideas for video topics along with your artwork that you share in the Discord may be featured in future videos. Have a bantha-tacular rest of your day, everyone, and as always, I hope that you've had your daily delicious dose of Bantha Stew.